today. I'm going to go over for the whole week what's happening. Oh my gosh, my trackpad is going to be really sticky from that donut. All right, so this is the overview for the week. Today, you're going to get notes and a demo on how to begin shaping the head and the body of your animal, and you're going to be putting them together today. So you have to commit. You have to pick an animal today. Tomorrow, you're going to get your last chunk of notes and a demo on major body parts like legs and wings and tails and ears and trunks and all those other body parts that you might be wondering how to make. Wednesday, I'm going to talk about facial features, how to do eyes and noses and teeth and claws and little details, and then textures like feathers and fur. Thursday, we're going to talk about refining the animal project. That's something I talk about a lot, is making it look its best, and then cutting the lid, because remember, this is a functional thing. It's going to be a jar with a lid, or maybe it's going to be a planter that you would put a plant in. And so we'll talk about how to make it be that. And then Friday, the project is due. And so to turn it in, since you're not here, you're going to be recording a video of your animal from all views. And I'll talk about more about what I want to see in that later in the week. Also, just so you know, looking ahead to next week, you only have 2 days of school next week. And that's kind of weird. So we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with 2 days. But at least one of the days will have the quiz. I know I had said the quiz was going to be this week, but when I realized that we had to cram the animal project all into this week, I figured that an easy thing to put off would be the quiz. So we'll review for the quiz. We'll make sure you have all the notes you need for the quiz next week. Okay, so put that out of your mind for now. But the notes you're taking today and tomorrow, they will be part of the quiz. So put those in your mind for now. Okay, so on the next clean page of your notebook, please write welcome, or you don't have to write welcome, write week 2, day 1. This was a funny picture that someone sent me this weekend of a comedy duo from Japan called Banana Man. And even though these aren't real clay vases, it made me giggle because their bellies are the vases. So I had to share that little smile with you today. So this is what you're doing today. You're getting notes on firing, what that is and what it does and what problems could arise from firing. You're going to get a demo on shaping the head and body of your animal and putting them together, and then you'll have your work time for today. So it's kind of a lot today, and I apologize for that, but some days are going to be like that. Okay, so on that page where you just wrote week 2, day 1, please write down these 4 terms, and one of the terms has little bullet points, and make sure you get that as well. So I'm going to play you a little musical interlude while you're writing. At least I think I am. There we go. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just write, and then I will elaborate a little bit.
Are you doing anything for your birthday today?
It's a really nice question to ask. No. Who does anything for anything anymore? No, we're probably going to order takeout from my favorite ramen noodle restaurant in St. Paul.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you know, it's like little ways to celebrate.
Yeah.
But no, unfortunately, nothing big.
Oh, okay.
But thanks for asking.
Yeah.
When you turn as old as I am, I'm turning 45 today, and like there's very little to celebrate when you're in your 40s. I mean, I'm happy to be healthy and all of that. But yeah, it's not like turning 21 or, 18 or something like that. All right, I'm going to start chatting about some of these terms. Go ahead and keep writing if you are still doing so. I guess I should ask, I'm like, I can't see you guys while I'm doing these notes pages. Do most of you like actually write it with the time that I've given you, or do most of you take a photo and then just write it later?
Take a picture and then write it later.
Yeah.
I
So,
write, and then as you start talking, I might like write notes based on that, and then
okay. Well, that's ideal. Okay. That's good. It's good to know because I don't know how long to pause to allow people to write because I can't see if you're still writing or not. I would hope that I whatever. It's just interesting to know what you're actually doing. All right, I'm going to talk now. So term number 1 is kiln. The kiln is the oven that fires our bone dry pots up to a temperature where the clay matures and the platelets permanently fuse together. So a kiln can be lots of different things. I happen to have electrical kilns here, but a kiln could be fired with wood. A kiln could be fired with vegetable oil. A kiln can be fired with a flamethrower and a propane tank from your grill. In fact, I have a couple of those kind of kilns that if you're back in the spring and if you take ceramics B 3rd trimester, we'll go outside and we'll build some kilns outside and actually fire complete with a flamethrower and the propane tank from my grill. So you'll get to see that kind of kiln. That's called a raku kiln. So a kiln is really anything that gets the clay hot enough so that the clay platelets melt together. Your oven at your house is not a kiln. Your oven would only warm the clay up to around 500 degrees. Most ovens go to around 5 or 525 degrees Fahrenheit, which wouldn't be hot enough to do anything other than warm up the clay. So you need something that's really high powered to take the clay up to the thousands of degrees needed to be able to melt the platelets. Term number 2, reasons your pot might blow up. There are 2 reasons, and it's important for you to know what they are so that you can avoid them. So the first thing that could make your pot blow up is air. So if you slip and score 2 things together and you don't slip and score it very well, if there's an air pocket in between, or even worse, if you don't slip and score at all and you just smack the pieces together and you think, oh, it's sticky, it'll stay together. Well, there's probably air trapped in between there. And what will happen is as that air pocket of trapped air expands, as the kiln heats up, that air expands and it will cause whatever is trapping it to just pop right off. And it is actually a very clean kind of explosion. And usually we can take that piece that pops off and usually we can repair it and get it back on there. And so it's unfortunate when that happens, and we certainly try to prevent an air explosion. But if an air explosion happens, it's usually fixable. And I'll tell you, this animal project that you're really kind of in earnest beginning today, the step you're going to be doing today, there's a big risk when you do that step, if you don't do it right, of the head of your animal blowing off. It happens every trimester. The first trimester, I think 4 kids' animal heads blew off. Last trimester, it was about the same, 4 or 5 animals' heads blew off. So when I get to that demo today, I'm going to be very specific about what I want you to do. And this is the trimester that I want 0 animal heads to be blown off. So no air explosions. The second kind of explosion that could happen is if there's water still in the clay. And that's caused by the clay being too thick. And this is an easy mistake to make also. If you leave the walls of your clay thicker than an inch, it becomes very difficult to tell if there's still water in that thickness when I put your pot in the kiln to fire it. So what will happen if there's water trapped inside those thick walls is the water will actually start to boil as the kiln heats up, and it will shatter your project into a million tiny shards. No repairing, no being able to fix a water explosion. It's beyond repair. So that's the worst kind of explosion to have by far. But you should know both of them: an air explosion, a water explosion. Air is caused by things not being joined well. Water is caused by things being too thick. So you never want to make anything thicker than an inch. Next term is bisque firing. This is the first firing that all our pots go through. And in that bisque firing, our pots are fired up to around 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 1900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equal to cone 04. And in that firing, they become permanent. The little clay platelets fuse together. In that first firing, that's when your explosion could happen. So it never happens in the second firing, because if there was going to be an issue with the air or the water, it would come out in the first firing. So when the pots come out of that bisque firing, they're called bisqueware, and they're ready to glaze. So this is also the reason why we don't glaze anything before that first firing, because if your project was to blow up in that first firing, little bits of your glaze project would stick to everybody else's project within a 2-foot radius of your project. And so that would be awful. Not only would it ruin your piece, but it would ruin everyone else's pieces. So that's why we don't glaze until after that firing, so we know whether there was going to be a problem or not. The second firing is the glaze firing. It's that's the firing where our pots are fired up to 2,100 degrees. So the glaze firing is much hotter. And that firing, in ceramic terms, we would call that temperature cone 6. And when the pots come out of that second firing, they are shiny, they are colorful, they are food safe, they are done. You can take them home, you can use them, you can put them in the microwave, you can put them in the dishwasher, and nothing blows up in that firing. It would have happened in the first firing. So those are your terms for today. Do you have any questions on those terms or any of those concepts? Okay, if you haven't taken a photo yet, if you're not done writing, take a photo. I'm going to move on in 3, 2, 1. Okay, draw a line under those vocab words. These are your steps for today. And I want you to get these in your notebook as well, because there's a lot of steps. And I want to make sure that you know what's first, second, third, etc. Put it in your own words, shorten it, whatever, but get these steps down, please. So the first thing you have to narrow down is you have to pick your animal. And this weekend, when I was looking at your animal photos, first of all, only about half of you turned in your animal photo assignment. So get that done today, please, if you didn't already. But you got to narrow down and pick your animal. And some of the animals that you showed me would work great. And then some of the animals would be a little bit more of a challenge. And I would have written a note to you in that assignment if I thought that one of your ideas was maybe going to be stronger than a different one. So you got to pick your animal today. I'm going to encourage you to make the animal in a sleeping pose just because it's easier and it's more stable. But if you want to make your animal upright, that's fine too. That's your choice. And then there's different ways to do it. So once you've chosen your animal, you're going to unwrap your clay spheres, which you should have put water on last Friday to keep them nice and pliable. And I want you to assess, what stage are your spheres in? Are they still in the really soft plastic stage? If so, great, you can work with them. Are they in the more firm but still workable leather hard stage? If they are, great, you can work with them. Are they bone dry? Like if you tried to push in one side of your sphere, is it immovable and not pushable? If so, you're going to have to make new spheres today. And it's not the end of the world. You know how to do the process. You can get back to having 2 spheres really rather quickly. It's just nice if you didn't have that setback. So I'm not there to help you with this. So you need to assess whether your clay is plastic, leather hard, or if it's unfortunately too dry and bone dry. In which case, just make new ones. You have enough clay. Third step, you're going to use your hands as your primary sculpting tool, and you're going to shape the large sphere into the general shape of your animal's body, and you're going to shape the small sphere into the general shape of your animal's head. And I'm going to show you that in the demo today, how to kind of start to look for those general shapes and how to start making them with your clay. Then you're going to have to choose your composition. Your composition is how you're arranging the components of your work of art. So remember, the 2 kinds of composition are static, where things are arranged in a line, like head is in front of the body, tail is in back of the body, or a dynamic composition where your animal might be curled in a little ball as it's sleeping. So it's up to you whether you do a static composition or a dynamic composition. I just want you to know that you need to be purposeful about that choice and decide which one you're going to do. 5th step, you're going to score and slip the head of your animal to the body. Notice I didn't say meld yet. First, we're just scoring and slipping really well to get that head on the body. Then this is the part that will tend to blow up if it's not done right. So then if you just have the head slipped and scored onto the body, it looks kind of weird because nobody's head, no animal's head is just like a jelly bean attached to another jelly bean. Like no animal looks like that. So it needs a neck. And so what you're going to do is once you have slipped and scored the head to the body, you're going to score and slip around that connection point, and you're going to wrap a coil of clay around that connection point, and you're going to meld that coil of clay so it becomes the neck. So it's more of a smooth transition from the head onto the body. And that extra coil that you wrap around it, that's where sometimes air gets trapped between the head and the body. And so when I demonstrate that, I'm going to be very purposeful about showing you how to do it so there's no air trapped in between. Once you have the head on there and it's scored and slipped and that extra coil is wrapped around and you've melded so the head actually looks like it's growing from the body, that's as far as you need to go for today. But if you're really excited and you're kind of in the zone and you want to start to make some of the other major features like legs and tails and wings and ears and all that, you can move on ahead if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to show you those other major features tomorrow. So you don't have to make those other features today. You can do that tomorrow after the demo. When you're finished for today, and remember, all you have to do for today is join the head to the body. You're going to snap a picture of that, and then you're going to wrap your animal with a damp paper towel, and you're going to wrap it around it just like a little blanket, and then you're going to bag it up. And this is just to ensure that your clay stays in that plastic or leather hard stage for the week. We need to lock it in that leather hard stage for as long as possible. So the damp paper towel is going to help ensure that nothing dries out, because once something dries out, you can't join anything more to it, and you have to start over again. So we really want to ensure that it stays leather hard. So that's the process for kind of finishing today. Any questions on those steps? I'm going to be showing you the steps in a moment. So if you have a question, I might answer it in a little bit when I do the demo. But if you have a question that sprung to mind, I'd be happy to answer it now. Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're planning to do like 2 animals together, like the octopuses that you did, would that be static or dynamic?
So that's a good question. I guess if you have octopus 1 and octopus 2 is right next to it, it's probably going to be static, unless you're going to put really long tentacles, and maybe the long tentacles will kind of curl around in a heart shape or something like that. But otherwise, it seems like maybe if they're just right next to each other, that's probably pretty static.
Okay.
And also, I'm glad you brought that up. If you're doing, like, there's some people that are doing animals that really don't have a separate head, like a frog or an octopus or, I don't know, hedgehog. If you make the 2 animals slipped and scored next to each other, you would not do the step where you wrap a coil around it and blend it, because that would look weird if it was 2 conjoined octopuses. So we want them to be connected strongly, but in some scenarios, you won't actually be blending it between the 2 spheres. So that's a little variation for some people.
Okay. And then if you wanted to do a hedgehog, like I kind of want to do a hedgehog, couldn't you use the small sphere and like make it pointy and then?
Yep, absolutely. That's where the shaping the sphere comes in. That's what I'm going to talk about first in the demo. But yep, that's exactly what you would do.
Then I don't need to make 2 hedgehogs?
You wouldn't need to make 2 hedgehogs. You could do, like, even though a hedgehog is kind of a ball by itself, it does have that little pointy bit that you could totally make the small sphere be that pointy bit and the big sphere be the body.
Okay.
Yep, that would work. Good questions. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go to the demo. Da, 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 da. Okay, so change my direction here. So I have my spheres from last week. Oh, you know what? Shoot. I forgot. I wanted to show you a bunch of pictures of different options. Sorry. I was just so excited to get started. Okay. So, so this is a couple examples of different options that I'm trying to think of, and I'm going to have you guys help me decide which one I make. It's going to be up to you. Okay, so this is a cat, sleeping cat. The one on the left is a static composition where the head is in front of the body, and then there's the body, and the tail curls around, but still the primary composition is linear. It's in a line. And then the drawing of the cat on the right, that's more of a dynamic composition where the body is curled, the head is curled, the tail is curled, everything is kind of in a circular ball shape. So cat is one of the options I'm thinking of. I thought it would be really cute to do Little Sebastian from Parks and Rec until I saw, like I started looking up how do Shetland ponies sleep. And I found this alarming picture of this Shetland pony, and it's sleeping. I promise it's sleeping, but it doesn't, it just looks very disturbing. So that if that's how a Shetland pony sleeps, I want no part of it. Then I was thinking of the little octopus, and I found that picture on the left, which is a good example of how I could make my sphere, you know, turn into a little octopus. And then the two knit ones are maybe how I would attach them together so it looks like they're conjoined and I have my two spheres. But I don't want to demo this because this is not probably how most people are going to be working. I want to demo an animal that has an actual head that's attached to its body. So then I came up with a chameleon because a chameleon is kind of a quirky thing. It's kind of unique. So I thought that might be fun to try. So I found these chameleons that could be used as inspiration. So I think in the demo, I want to do either the cat or the chameleon. So I need you guys to tell me, what would you rather see, a cat or a chameleon?
A chameleon.
Okay,
Yeah.
chameleon. Any other votes for anything else? Or do you want to see chameleon?
Cat.
Cat.
Chameleon.
It's tie so far. Who's going to break the tie?
Chameleon.
Chameleon. All right, chameleon.
Chameleon.
Cat.
Chameleon. Chameleon it is. Chameleonaire. All right, coming up. All right, so now I'm going to go to the demo. Okay. So I had to settle on what my animal was. So thank you for indulging me in that. So if I'm making a chameleon, it would be really helpful if I had a picture of a chameleon in front of me when you're working. I want you to have either your drawing that you drew or your photo that you found on the internet, like there in front of you, because making this up out of your head is not going to be the most successful way to do this. So I'm just going to remember, I'm doing what I told you just not to do. I'm going to try and remember what a chameleon's body looks like. And as I, first of all, take a look at my spheres, this one's pretty soft and I would say kind of like plastic yet. So that's awesome. This one's definitely more firm. It's more leather hard. I could still move it. You know, I can push on it and it's fine. I do need to be a little bit cautious. So I'm starting to shape this now to my chameleon's body shape. I think the chameleon's body is kind of like a fat hot dog. It's kind of skinny and kind of curved. So that's what I'm going to try and do. And because this is hollow inside, it's going to allow me some leeway in kind of shaping it, but it's not a fast thing. I'm not going to be able to move it really quickly. So as I start to shape it, so I'm starting to kind of try and make it be like that elongated fat hot dog, or kind of like a jelly bean. A fat jelly bean is another good way to think of it. I'm using my hands kind of in a cone shaped kind of cupping movement to make this end get a little bit more pointy. This is where the tail will come from. And so this is where the neck or the head will be. As I was squeezing it, it actually popped. And so some of the air that was trapped inside has escaped right there, which is fine. I can let that air escape. I'll repair that later. As you squeeze the clay, that air inside will become under pressure and it might pop out. It might break your seam, but that's okay. It's going to be, if your clay is leather hard, it should be pretty easy to just blend that back in. All right, so that's kind of a good start for the body of my chameleon, I think. It doesn't look super chameleon-y yet, but trust me, it'll get there. So then I'm going to start to sculpt my head. So a chameleon has a snout, and then it has a big rill. It has this ridge on the back, almost like a stegosaurus. I think it's probably a modern day descendant of dinosaurs, right? So it's not that surprising. So I'm going to start to pinch off one side of it to kind of make where the nose will be. And I'm going to actually use the table as a tool to flatten out the back side. This is the side where that ridge will be. And I'm going to press the clay, moving it little by little, just with my hands as the primary tool, to try and make it have that kind of ridge in the back. So now I have the raw materials for my my chameleon, and I could decide if I want to have my chameleon just looking forward and have the composition be static, or if I want my chameleon's head turned and have it be more dynamic. So for me, like my preference is I just think it's really cute when animals coil up in a ball. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have my composition be dynamic. So I'm actually gonna take the body that I've created here, and I'm gonna try and bend it a little bit so the body already has sort of a curve to it. And as I'm doing that, my seam is opening back up again, but I'm not gonna sweat that. Again, it's easy to fix. Eventually, obviously, both the big sphere and the little sphere will have holes cut in them. In the back of your animal, there's going to be a big hole cut, and that's where the lid will go or where your plant will go. And in the head, we're going to put a secret hole in the head so that the head doesn't blow up. And I'll tell you more about that when we get to it. Okay, so I have now my curled body, I have my head, so I'm ready to start scoring and slipping. So you need your slip that you made last week. And you need your fork, which I gave you in your swag bag. Incidentally, one of the things you can do when you're shaping, especially the head of your creature, this is kind of an easy little way to make eye sockets, and that's kind of part of the head structure, or the skull structure. So with my chameleon, if I take my thumbs and kind of trace back from the snout where the eyes would go and kind of gently press in, can you see that? Gently press in where those eyes would go, it just starts giving you a sense of the skull, like where those eyeballs will go eventually when we start talking about eyes. And I just did that. I'm going to try and do it so you can see from your point of view by just kind of tracing my thumbs back from the nose and then just pressing in where the eye sockets would be on either side of the head. Because animals don't have eyes on the front of their heads. They have eyes on the sides of their heads. So that's one thing that's going to help your animal look more lifelike. Okay, so the head is going to get attached right here. And actually, where it's going to get attached, I don't really want it to have that point like that. So I'm going to cut and make it more flat. It'll just be easier to join it right there. So I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to heavily score that area. And so I dipped the fork in the slip, so I'm scoring and slipping simultaneously. And then I'm going to do the same thing here so that the head of my chameleon is really going to grip where I've scored it. And I'm going to kind of push it on there. Now, in my situation, the head like has this great difference in height from the body because it has that rill that goes around it. So I have to get a coil of clay inside here and do my melding, but I'm not going to be melding the entire head onto the body. So if I had done a cat, I wouldn't have had this big dramatic change from head to body, and the head, once I wrap the coil around for the neck, the head would blend a lot more into the body. So again, you have to pay attention to your animal and what does its head do as it goes into the body. In the case of the chameleon, the head is just a lot more distinctive in shape than the body. So I just grabbed a little additional clay, and with this small amount of clay, I don't even need to wedge it. So I just have this little amount of clay. I'm going to roll a coil. And this clay is really soft. That's good. That means I'm going to be able to really wedge it down in there. So now one of the things you can do to make sure that this is not a spot that blows up and has trouble is I'm going to do some additional scoring inside here so that this coil, which I'm about to put inside there, really has the opportunity to grip that area that I'm trying to join it to. So I'm going to flip this over, score and slip the bottom. Normally you would not score and slip before you meld something. We didn't do it when we were joining our pinch pots, but we are doing it just because this is such a problem area. So I put a coil in there. And now one of the other tools that you have in your toolkit is this big popsicle stick. So I'm going to use that big popsicle stick to really make sure I am pushing the clay down into that crevice between the body of my animal and the head of my animal. And so it's really, hopefully, going to take the place of any air that's inside that area. And then I'm also going to use the popsicle stick to meld back and forth. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to use the popsicle stick to just jam that little coil of clay down inside that neck zone. and I'm going to meld it back and forth. Now, if your animal has a really big neck, and just by melding one coil around, if it doesn't give you enough neck bulk, you can do this a second time. So I'm just finishing it off, really trying to make sure that that coil gets down inside that nook and cranny, melding it both directions. Okay, so now this kind of becomes the start of my curled up chameleon. Can you kind of see it? Sort of, kind of. If I had a thicker neck, I would do the same thing again. I would just score and slip another layer, put another coil around there until that neck got to be the size and the proportion that makes sense for your animal. Okay, so if you were really excited to move on to some of the other features, you can definitely do so. Here's the one bit of advice I would give you. Like if I wanted to make legs and a tail and whatever today, don't put anything that's going to carry a load on today. Like if I wanted to make legs, let me just make a really quick little chameleon leg. So here's Mr. Chameleon's leg. I wouldn't probably join it today. Well, then again, if he's going to be sleeping, then it's not going to carry weight. So maybe I could put legs on today, but I'm mainly going to talk about legs tomorrow. If you are going to make your creature sleeping and you want to do some of the other features, go for it. If you want to wait till the demo tomorrow, that's fine too. So my final step for today, especially since this is leather hard, I need to keep the body leather hard. And the head too is a little bit softer, but it's kind of leather hard. And I really can't let it dry out beyond that. So I just have a single piece of paper towel here and I have a little cup of water handy. So I just dipped my paper towel in that water and then I squeezed out every bit of water that I can so that my paper towel is just damp. Like I just want it damp. If it's drippy, believe it or not, it could actually melt your project. And then you'd come back the next day and you would have a pile of goo sitting on your tray. And that would be awful. You'd have to start over. So I just want it damp. So I'm going to just wrap him up, you know, give him a little, tuck him in, my little limbless chameleon, limbless and faceless, poor guy. Then I'm going to put him on my tray. And I'm just going to lay the bag over the top. So I have 2 plies, 2 layers of plastic, and I'm going to tuck it under. Or if that seems like it might come undone real easily, you can slide it in the plastic bag and then maybe put it in a second plastic bag just to really ensure that nothing's going to dry out. Because even though it's a plastic bag, it does have minute little pores and things do dry out a little microscopic amount in the plastic bag. So double bagging it is always a good way to just really make sure it stays pliable. So that's your process for today. You're shaping your head and your body. You're scoring and slipping things together. You're ensuring that nothing's going to have air in that connection point. So you're really being cautious to score and slip and meld and push out any air that might be trapped in between. And then you're taking a photo and you're wrapping it up for today. Those are your steps in a nutshell.